take democracy for granted. Yes, me, you, and most people around us. Most of us were born in democracies, and the dark days of the 20th century seem a long time ago. So why do we need to worry? Well, yes, maybe democracy is a bit under stress in Turkey, and well, yes, in Russia. And some of what Donald Trump is saying in the US is worrying. With all that happening around us, what will it take for us to realize that liberal democracy is not as secure as we used to think? That it's not guaranteed even in the EU as well? Blaming the EU has become a national sport. But presenting an easy solution to a complex issue has a name. It's called populism. And populism can threaten liberal democracy.
But when there's a vacuum in our democracy, when we don't vote, when we take our basic rights and freedoms for granted, a politics of fear and resentment and retrenchment takes hold, and demagogues promise simple fixes to complex problems.
In Federalist 10, James Madison wrote that men of factious tempers, of local prejudices, or of sinister designs may, by intrigue, by corruption, or by other means, first obtain the suffrages and then betray the interests of the people.
This Congress has championed the unwinding of campaign finance laws to give billionaires outside influence over our politics, systematically attacked voting rights to make it harder for young people and minorities and the poor to vote.
When you're talking about democracy in this epoch of time, are we progressing or we are retrogressing in East Africa, in Africa as well?
I did mention that the way we approach democracy in Africa, in Kenya, does demonstrate that the democratic system as we have received it doesn't seem to be working as it should. And I did say that I think we are at that point where we need to actually think very hard and recraft our democracy to fit our situation.
What stands out from Brexit is the gap between public perception and empirical reality. It's been suggested that we've moved to a post-factual society where evidence and truth no longer matter and lies have equal status to the clarity of evidence. So how can we rebuild respect for truth and evidence into our liberal democracies? It has to begin with education, but it has to start with a recognition that there are huge gaps.
Well, the basic message is that echo chambers and information cocoons are a real problem for democracy. It's very important for people to step outside a kind of hall of mirrors, which they can construct with the aid of Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, and encounter both topics that are unfamiliar and maybe not especially interesting to them, and certainly points of view that aren't congenial and that may be disruptive to what they already think.
How should we live together? And now we have an answer with a parliament that uses sortition. But how would we get from here to there? How could we fix our broken system and remake democracy for the 21st century? We could build a social movement demanding change, which is what the Sortition Foundation is doing in the UK. And at some point, we should institute it. Perhaps the first step will be a second chamber in our parliament full of randomly selected people, a citizen senate, if you will. There is a campaign for a citizen senate in France and another campaign in Scotland, and it could, of course, be done right here in Hungary.